As you may have heard, President Trump has fired former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe. The President fired him on a recommendation from the FBI's career internal investigators. And despite all the attention this firing is getting, as a practical matter, it doesn't mean that much. McCabe was set to retire in days anyway, and contrary to news reports, he is not at risk of losing most of his enormous federal pension, much bigger than the pension you're not getting. But none of this has stopped the usual hysteria merchants from predicting the end of the republic. Some have accused the White House of obstructing justice. It's hard to see how that works exactly, since McCabe was leaving anyway. Others have called the firing an assault on democracy, as if unelected career bureaucrats found guilty of misconduct by their own agencies were somehow the linchpin of representative government. Once again, how do all these dumb people get jobs on television? That's another show. But tonight, there are really only two questions that actually matter here. First, did Andrew McCabe do anything wrong? And two, if so, did it justify his firing? Well, according to the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility, McCabe allowed FBI agents to disclose sensitive information to the press, leak. He then lied to federal investigators about what he did. That's what the investigation found. Now, if McCabe really did that, losing his pension ought to be the least of his worries, because lying to the FBI is a felony. Try it and find out. Martha Stewart went to prison for that. Michael Flynn had his life destroyed over it. Mere mortals are not allowed to lie to the FBI. They wind up in handcuffs when they do. And of course, it's a far greater threat to all of us when FBI officials lie. The FBI is the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world. It has near absolute power over you, the power of life and death. Yet weirdly, nobody on CNN seems bothered in the slightest by any of this. One of the FBI's top officials caught lying about an active investigation? Whatever. No big deal. Punishing him is the crime here. That's an odd response if you think about it. Would CNN panelists show concern if, I don't know, a local sheriff lied in order to frame teenagers for crimes he didn't commit? How about if your local police department fabricated evidence? Dishonest law enforcement is a big deal, no matter who the president is. In fact, it's the biggest deal. It's the worst abuse of power. And yet, for some reason, our designated watchdogs, the very people who are supposed to be protecting us from this kind of third world nonsense, think it's totally fine, as long as the net result is a bad news cycle for Trump. Watch.
This kind of thing that we saw with respect to Andrew McCabe is the kind of thing you would expect Putin to do.
My problem is the timing and the way it all worked. It just seemed mean-spirited.
The point is to tear down the credibility of all people involved with anything pertaining to anything that might look into this president, which leads one to believe that this is authoritarian behavior.
There are kids getting shot in our schools. There's an epidemic of people dying from overdoses. And what is the president minding? These little vindictive, small, let's get rid of McCabe and let's deny him his pension.
Over the weekend, the former head of the CIA, John Brennan, came completely unglued over McCabe's firing on Twitter, Twitter being the place where people like that now go to lose their minds. Here's the quote. "When the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known," Brennan wrote to the president, "you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history," fingers smoking as he typed it. But here's the interesting part. In response to Brennan's tweet, the one you just heard, former UN Ambassador Samantha Power wrote this, quote, "Not a good idea to piss off John Brennan." Let that sink in. What the hell does that mean? The former head of the CIA is going to do what exactly in response? No wonder people are afraid of the deep state. This is what it looks like when it bares its fangs. Thwart us and we will destroy you. In case you're looking for a real threat to American democracy, and there are some, there you go. Alan Dershowitz is an emeritus professor at Harvard Law School, and he joins us tonight. Professor, it seems like there's only one of two options. Either the FBI internal investigators are corrupt and lying, or Andrew McCabe, the former deputy director, is corrupt or lying. Are there other options? And if so, which one of those is right?
Well, there's a very simple way of finding out. Let McCabe waive his right of privacy and demand that the public see the Office of Investigation report, the Office of Professional Responsibility report. Then we can decide for ourselves whether or not this was a corrupt investigation or whether or not, in fact, McCabe is guilty of what I have called test lying. And Comey is guilty of testifying because, remember, their testimony today conflicts. McCabe basically says that he was authorized to make the leak by the head of the FBI. And the head of the FBI has said under oath that he has never authorized anybody to make a leak. So this whole issue of testifying, which was on the front page of the New York Times just yesterday, is front and center. When the guardians need to have guardians, when the people who are supposed to protect us are testifying falsely for whatever reason, we, the public, have a right to know about that.
Well, absolutely. And we want to live in a country where we can trust our most basic institutions like law enforcement and the judiciary. So, but put this in context for us. Well, I guess look, I don't know. I have not seen the report. And I'm taking it at face value, and maybe I shouldn't. My real point, however, is that the allegation is a very serious one, that the deputy director of the FBI might be lying about a current criminal investigation. Why are so many others dismissive of that, like it's no big deal? Larry Tribe, your former colleague at Harvard, for example. Why?
Because everybody is so involved in this partisan conflict that anything that's done against Trump must be good according to the partisans on one side, and anything done against Trump must be bad according to the partisans on the other side. Remember, from day one, I said, do not appoint a special counsel. Have a nonpartisan investigative commission like the Commission of 9/11 that has incredible trust and that doesn't have a partisan dog in this race. And they have to be the ones to make this decision. Right now, the FBI has lost its credibility. The CIA is losing its credibility. Congressional committees aren't trusted by either side. It's not too late to convene a nonpartisan, congressionally authorized investigative commission to look into whether there was collusion, whether the Russians tried to interfere. Of course they did, but we need to have the evidence, and how to stop them from doing it again. That's what the American public is interested in, not finger-pointing by both sides.
So let's just very quickly take Trump out of this, and if you could just send a message to your lifelong fellow liberals who care about civil liberties about the stakes here. What would it be like to live in a country where the chief law enforcement agency was actually corrupt, where its leaders were lying about investigations? How might that affect liberals down the road, would you say?
Well, I have a message for both sides. You know, historically, it's been the liberals and the Democrats who haven't trusted the FBI, haven't trusted the Justice Department, and have said, let's make sure that we have oversight. And it's been the Republicans and the conservatives who said, oh, anything the FBI says has to be correct, has to be true, even J. Edgar Hoover. Now we've seen it all flip because partisanship has overcome principle. And my message to both Democrats and Republicans is get back to principle and stop this partisanship. The American public is interested and cares about the truth from a nonpartisan point of view. They're sick and tired of a Republican truth, a Democrat truth, a Trump truth, an anti-Trump truth. We need the truth in a nonpartisan way.
Right.